When I'm reading about you, there's so many times that you're described as trans, Jewish, Chinese, and deaf, time and time again. And granted, we'll probably even use it for this. Does that become exhausting and feel like you're always put in a box, these like 4 boxes all the time?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm so tired of it.
The lesson today, throw out the boxes. The teacher, Chella Man.
I'm so proud to be trans, deaf, Jewish, Chinese, but also, I'm also like curious and determined and stubborn and sometimes extremely impatient. And other human things.
And accomplished. Author, artist, Forbes 30 Under 30, acting in the DC series Titans, IMG's first trans masculine model, and TED Talk speaker. At 25, Chella has lived.
I feel like a shapeshifter in more ways than one. If you literally line up all the images of myself growing up, like I feel like I could be at least 12 different people.
Many lives and constantly being scrutinized.
There's never been a single moment in my life where I don't feel like I was asked to explain. I refuse to be, in just the way I'm answering this, a binary. I never identified or will identify as a man or a woman. I've never felt that way, and I've become incredibly misgendered by the media.
We're gonna set the record, have some fun, and ask some questions.
With a little help from an interpreter. Where are you now? How do you feel about your body now? You continue to love it.
I love my body.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a lot of people do.
Oh.
You're a very good-looking person. I'm not trying to flirt here, but you are.
I'm Matthew Rodrigues, reminding you it's okay to ask questions. We're celebrating pioneers in the queer community in hopes of opening minds and hearts through thoughtful conversations. To better understand each other, let's talk and listen. Maybe then we'll realize we're a lot more alike than different.
Okay. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Damn, we're jumping.
I know, we're jumping. But because I ask that because I feel like you are such an old soul, but you're only 25. And I've been watching you. I've been watching videos from when you were 14 and 15, and I thought you were so present with yourself at such an early age in a way that I don't see with other people as young as you are.
Wow, it's so interesting to be perceived. I've gotten that a lot, but that's based off of your experience with my online persona or just meeting me these past few minutes?
It was kind of metaphorical because I feel like you come across like you've lived many lives because you have a lot of insight.
Totally. I definitely feel like I've lived many lives. I feel like a shapeshifter in more ways than one. If you literally line up all the images of myself growing up, like I feel like I could be at least 12 different people. Yeah. I want to believe in that. It's also a feeling, like I definitely feel like an old soul, and I've gotten that from many people, even when I was very young. Yeah. It's not like a new comment. I'm not sure.
We were having a discussion about how we would conduct this interview, and my team was going back and forth with your team and all that stuff. And I loved what you wrote in this email, and I just wanted to read a little part of it because I think it's so important.
Yeah, sure, you can read it.
If they are completely open to redesigning how we speak about trans bodies and truly focusing on the present and future joy, I'm in. If they want to stick with the past, I will be passing.
I mean, honestly, that's an email that I've sent many times.
Yeah. So what is that? What the timeline is the traditional, I thought about, I didn't like my body at this point, and then I went on this hormone. Like, that's what you're talking about when you say the timeline. Is that correct?
I mean, there's just the stereotypical narrative of the trans bodies and the trans experience that has truth. But again, it circles back to what we were speaking about before of, it's not the entire truth. It's not the whole story. And it's also not everyone's story who's trans. Part of my story is that experience. And it's not even that I didn't like my body to begin with. Like, I love my body, and I've always loved my body. I had to learn the ways that it didn't align as I grew and changed and shifted, and find the opportunities and avenues that could enable me to feel realigned in my truth again. But I've always been so grateful for my body. This has not been a battle with my body. It's been a battle with the socio-political implications that have been imposed on me unconsensually. But I've always loved my body and cared for my body. And I think that's like a foundational point that I think personally I want to reinstate about my journey. There have been bits and pieces like growing a chest or like certain things through puberty that felt really misaligned. But I didn't hate my body. I said that earlier because that's the language I had. And this also goes back to the language, right? The language I had, the resources I had, the tools I had. And growing up in central Pennsylvania, all I could say is, I hate this.
Yeah. They could understand that. They could understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I was like 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
what else am I gonna say?
Yeah.
Which is true, I did hate it.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate myself. But I thought I did. And that's what's so heartbreaking.
When I'm reading about you, there's so many times that you're described as trans, Jewish, Chinese, and deaf, time and time again. And granted, we'll probably even use it for this. Does that become exhausting and feel like you're always put in a box, these like 4 boxes all the time?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of it.
Yeah.
I mean, language is complicated, especially nowadays, as we're trying to find connection more often than ever. And with everything happening politically, we resort to these labels and definitions to find community and empowerment and representation, right? So there's so much liberation in those identities, and there's so much joy, but it's also very constraining when only certain narratives are tied to those words. And when repeated so often, it starts to feel flat and not even real, Not that those stories aren't real, but they're not the whole truth. It starts to feel like scarcity.
Yeah.
So I'm so proud to be trans, deaf, Jewish, Chinese, but also I'm also like curious and determined and stubborn and sometimes extremely impatient.
Yeah.
And other human things that we don't have to shed so much light on because, they're not being systemically oppressed in the same way. And so it holds less weight, not because in a humane way having those qualities are any less than being something else, but we need to emphasize these things that have been systemically erased and, give them their space back. But it's exhausting because...
Have you seen the word trans used to divide America more and more in recent years in regards to politics?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I've ever seen it not used as a divider, unfortunately. I think every single socio-political identity label that we listed that I have is unfortunately interchangeably used as a negative adjective or an adjective that is creating such a binary, creating such a flatness that usually isn't even true.
I love how you use art to break the binary. And your art is filled with movement and flowing. And do you feel that you're able to live that in your own life, what you create as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I don't make art to break the binary. My art just breaks the binary. I approach my work through how I feel and what sometimes I want to consciously educate others on, but I am actively more than ever trying to use like my intuition first and foremost before I'm thinking about how it's going to be perceived. I think when I was really young, you know, and I was like coming into these definitions of what is it to be queer, what is it to be disabled, a person of color, all these things, I had to really lean into language to find the community behind it. But now that I found that, I'm trying to understand where language has created unnecessary boundaries and the feeling under it all. And I'm trying to just like dwell in that feeling and create from that. And then what I've seen more often than not is it's other people saying, oh wow, your art is like breaking the binaries, or it's so expansive and all these things. But I'm like,
You were,
I guess. Yeah.
You're like, sure, great.
You know? But it's also like, it's just how I feel.
Yeah.
And that's the most real thing. And then we attach, language comes from feeling. It comes from this innate desire to connect with people. And I'm just trying to get back to the source of that, you know? And use language then to intentionally communicate what I'm doing. But
Is that part exhausting too? Because here you are, you've had to explain who you are as a person, and now you're after explaining your art as well. Like you're like, I just want to draw.
I don't know life without that though.
Yeah.
There's never been a single moment in my life where I don't feel like I was asked to explain.
Do you have a sense of competitiveness when you look at other people and you see that they're really good at what they're doing and you want to strive to do better? Do you feel that?
No, interestingly, actually, that's a great question because I don't compare my work intentionally. It's just like comparing your body to someone else. We just all have an individual set of humanness. And it just doesn't make sense to compare to anyone else. You know, I mean, it's also like a founding principle of disability justice. You just shouldn't compare what is beautifully different, you know? And with my art, I think I realized that early on. Comparing only took away from things that I innately cherished about my work.
Was that something you had to learn? Or did it become natural? Okay, because I compare myself constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like the things that we learn, we just continuously have to put into practice. So I still deal with that today, you know, like actively. I went to the Whitney Biennale yesterday. It was so beautiful, but I would notice and clock like when comparing became detrimental versus when it can be empowering.
For yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So you were taking a mental note as to when you felt those feelings.
When I can,
Yeah.
you know, when it's conscious enough. Yeah.
Do you come to this part of the city?
Oh no.
No?
I have no idea where we are. I'm following you.
You don't know where we are?
Well, I do. I come here to go to MoMA.
Okay. MoMA's
Right, that's
up here.
nearby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
MoMA's up here. But it's so funny because this is 30 Rock. This is like an institution for TV, and so many moments have happened here.
I don't know.
You really don't know pop culture.
Yeah.
I love
No,
that.
yeah, exactly. I told you. I
Yeah.
warned you.
Yeah.
I really don't know a lot of pop culture.
Yeah. I love.
just like, I don't know, I was like reading comics.
Well, okay. So when you were in Titans, did you know about the DC universe at all?
I did because I grew up watching a lot of superhero shows
Okay.
with my dad. Yeah. I've always been obsessed with superheroes. So I was aware.
Why do you think you love a superhero? Because of their ability to overcome and...
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's just like those fables of like the underdog succeeding and distributing goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah. I think you're a superhero of sorts.
I've always wanted to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I
You
had
could play Spider-Man.
Thanks. I
think you
appreciate
could.
that.
I think you could.
Because like I feel like he's nerdy,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he's like got a good amount of like charisma.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could embody that.
Right. You take the glasses off, and then you're just like, there we go. There we go. That's
And
Spider-Man.
also,
Okay, how's your?
there's actually in the
Isn't that how he does it?
he
Isn't
fights
that
with love is what we always say, too. So I'm like, it's in my destiny.
Wow, that's pretty. I never
Yeah.
thought about that. Love you. How has New York changed who you are and who you can be?
I think it's given me so much representation.
Yeah.
You know, moving here, seeing queer people walk down the street, just the diversity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I time traveled like thousands of years into the future.
It's amazing, isn't it? I went to a town that was all white and not very diverse. And I remember just feeling at home when I stepped into this city for college. It's electrifying.
I was in culture shock for a long time.
Yeah.
Part of me still is.
So I wanted to leave at times because I was overwhelmed by it all. Did you ever have those moments? Or I was like, I can't do all this. This is not me.
I don't think by the diversity, but I think by the energy. The way people find validation in productivity can be exhausting sometimes because I did and am actively trying to unlearn that too. I'm moving more slow than I've ever moved.
How do you do that with art? Do you just tell people like I'm not producing right now? Like how do you slow it down?
That's a great question. That's one that I'm still figuring out, honestly. But I mean, it's been a lot of, before figuring out those boundaries, just like looking inward and reconnecting with my body, because it's honestly like, I've been so disconnected for so much of my life because I had to be to get away from the frustration and the sadness and the anger. And now I think I'm just allowing myself to surrender to everything that I'm feeling, like the grief, the anguish of like the state of the world, the joy.
Where do you find joy right now?
Well, I think to sum it up in connection, which I think is the most human thing, connection is really like where it's all at. That's why we're alive.
I can certainly relate to that. It's what I love to do for a living.
Exactly. I think all humans are really just looking for connection.
I want to step back to you talking about being deaf. I wonder how being deaf helped you deal with being trans and how being trans helped you with being deaf, if at all.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I think for every marginalized identity, if you strip back all the language, it's the same emotions. Yeah. It's inaccess to something. It's the deprivation of safety, scarcity. It's the same. You can find it mirrored in every single marginalized community. And it's so painful and it's so sad. So of course, every lesson I've learned from being deaf can be applied in other ways, because essentially I'm just looking for access. I'm looking for safety. I'm looking for connection and abundance, not scarcity. That's also why collective liberation is so important, because every single community should be working together. We should be informing each other, connecting, you know. It's not a competition.
Was it easier for you to connect with your trans community versus your deaf community? Were they easy for you to slip into?
Oh no.
No.
I mean,
No.
in some ways, yes. All of my answers ever will be layered.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
never like an
That's what I
answer,
like
no.
about you,
Okay,
though.
great.
I like
great.
that. Yeah.
'Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
yes and no.
Yeah.
For every single answer.
That's what's fun. That's what's good. That's what's deep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I think, Like, yeah, with the trans community, it was a really, I refuse to be, in just the way I'm answering this, a binary. Yeah. I never identified or will identify as a man or a woman. I've never felt that way. And I've become incredibly misgendered by the media due to how I have passing privilege and male privilege now, which is a very real thing, but it's not how I identify. But I'm also mindful of that. It's something that I have. So it was tough to come to terms with the fact I wanted top surgery and I wanted to be on testosterone, but I didn't want to be a man. And there was such a lack of validation in the community that way, which is so ironic because it's the same patriarchy we're dealing with across the board, where we're re-implementing gender roles to validate ourselves for the very things that we shouldn't have to. So that's what my TED Talk is about when I was 19, because I had a very close trans friend of mine mirror that journey. She also has male privilege, and she also presents masculine, but uses clearly she, her pronouns, and identifies very femme inside because that's how she feels, you know? And that's the thing about language too. It gets to a point where it's just the language, but what the realest thing is how you feel. And I still feel how I felt. Like, I've been many people, I've been reincarnated many times, but I've always been the same inside. I can't speak for anyone else's journey as a trans person. I don't know, but that's how it's been for me.
You made me lose all my thought because what you just said was very powerful. And I think, like you said, no matter what group you're in, people want you to be more of something or less of something. And that's one of the reasons we started this show, because I felt that I maybe wasn't gay enough or queer enough or informed enough.
Yeah, that's so hurtful.
Right. Like, and I put that on myself. I don't think anybody put it on me. The intention in doing this was to at least try my best to know how everyone else lives. So you just saying that really highlights the goal of what we're trying to do here.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, it's also like, you don't need to wait to give yourself permission by finding it in other people. That's the thing about sitting with yourself and just looking at everything you're feeling is like, that's it. That's real. It's real because you feel it. And you don't need to prove that to anyone, and you don't need to find it in anyone, because maybe they don't have it.
Put his hearing aid back
baptized or something. It's so calm inside there.
You described autonomy as if you were going to be giving birth. I wonder what your intention was when you started to create this performance piece.
My intention has been many, and it's shifted throughout time. I conceived the performance about 4 years ago now, and long answer short, it's the title. It's to reflect and celebrate and grieve all the ways that I've had to experience autonomy in my life. And it's giving birth, and it's also like laying to rest so many parts of myself that I needed to let go of to gain autonomy.
One of the elements for autonomy required you to cast your whole body. And I don't know if it was plaster or clay.
So weird.
Why did you want to do that? And what was that experience like?
So essentially, I'm creating a clone of myself. I'm literally creating my body from the ground up. Because as we spoke about a bit earlier, I felt very disembodied for most of my life. And to gain autonomy, not only did I have to make all of these mental, spiritual, physical choices, but I, in so many ways, had to just build my body from the ground up, build my mind, build my ideologies about the world. And interestingly enough, to create this clone of myself, this silicone clone, to answer your question about the material, I had to first be constrained to be liberated. So I was on the floor of my studio, coated in goo and total restraint for perhaps like 5 hours or so. And I honestly, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't anticipate like the physical pain that would set in from like holding your body at a specific angle for so long, and the floor was just concrete, cold. And it's also a performance that I believe Autonomy, the performance, began then. It's honestly something that I could have never done even a few years ago because I was healing from so much trauma and self-reflecting, as I've shared, and understanding the ways that I had centered so much validation within productivity, which was very hard to differentiate because I do what I love. So it's like my soul is in it, but also it just needs to be balanced with rest. And I was just coming face to face with how I've been in flight mode for so long to cope, like moving, running, doing. Because the scariest thing at certain times was to just sit. Like, just sit here. No phone, no distractions, can't even, like, no writing, like, just sit here.
That rings true with me because I was in Spain when I realized I was gay. I was walking through the streets. I didn't speak Spanish. I didn't know anyone. I was just alone and had no communication, basically, before cell phones. And it was literally like a light went off. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gay. Like, it was quite powerful.
Did you see someone?
No, nobody. Like, there was no hot dude. There was no
Sometimes
makeup.
that'll do it.
That'll do it.
It's like game over.
Yeah. But I say that to people often. I'm like, you just need to be alone and with yourself. And I think it's very hard for people.
Yeah, which is so
it's sad. Yeah, it's
so
sad.
But I also, like, I get it.
Yeah.
'Cause same. But it's interesting because also, like, your silence is different than my silence.
Yours is real silence.
Like, you're sitting in silence is probably you still hearing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You do. So when you wear your cochlear implants and when you don't, do you feel that the way you create art is different?
I think so. You know,
Yeah.
I think hearing people are very easily distracted.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. It's
yeah.
I feel so lucky to be deaf. Truly. There's a level of yourself almost I feel like you really can't move away from sometimes, even if you want to. Like, one of the ways I began to realize that was when I was running a half marathon a few months ago. I can't wear my implants because they have yet to design a cover for it that is waterproof. So like, even if I sweat like a little bit, it could ruin the whole cochlear implant, and it costs a lot of money. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, the way disabled people have to pay so much to exist, especially in America and definitely all over the world. But anyway, okay. So I was running without sound, and I was, to my knowledge, the only deaf person there. And I was like watching everyone else run with headphones in, like listening to something. Yeah. But I just didn't have anything except my own thoughts. Like, there wasn't this beat to run to, there wasn't a podcast, there wasn't any other thoughts entering my head except for my own, not even a sound. And by the end of it, I found myself like imagining my younger self, like on the sidelines, cheering me on, and just like going down this hole of myself. And just like having conversations with myself with different layers of myself. You asked if I believe in reincarnation. I'm not sure in terms of alternative lifetimes, but I definitely believe in reincarnation within a single lifetime. And I feel like I was having conversations with all the different layers of myself. And that run became such a fulfilling spiritual release where I would have never even allowed myself to have if I had anything coming in my ear. And I really do believe if we spend enough time with ourselves, we really hold all the answers to what we want to know about ourselves. And we often look for that in other places, which can sometimes be helpful balance. But a lot of times we know what we want. We just have to move through a lot to find it.
And we're so distracted, so distracted.
Yeah, yeah.
It's endless. But it's what's interesting though too is that you the start of your career was through social media, which in and of itself is a distraction. How do you feel about social media now? I notice you've pulled back from it quite a bit.
I mean, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to use it as that, but it's not real life. When I felt it entering what I felt was my real life, I got scared because I don't believe that I should find what is real on social media. And I wanted to reconnect with what I really felt was real, like literally felt. Not what I believe, like I felt something, I felt this emptiness. And up until that point, I felt I had done a good job balancing for myself. But it was so much, we're consuming so much. And it's beautiful because it's an incredible way to connect. But I wanted to, for myself, just find that balance again. And I found so much of that by pulling back.
You've done Autonomy. Where would you like to see your art go?
I just want to be present, honestly. I think I've experienced a lot of the question of what's next, what's next. I'm really happy with where I am. And I think I just want to make art that reflects how I feel. I don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to look like yet.
The name of this show is It's Okay to Ask Questions. What are the questions you wish people were asking more?
It depends on if they mean it, honestly. I think a lot of people ask questions, but they don't always have intentionality as a foundation of the question. I want people to only ask what they really want to know.
And be ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't be ready for the truth. That's the thing. But if you want to know, ask it.
That's a good place to end it. I think this is